Oh, yeah, baby. 1-800-449-8255. The Clark the Shark. Incredibly, I don't even know what the word is today, you guys. It's a beautiful Saturday, March 22. I don't think it's March 23, 2025. The most dynamically sophisticated and arrogant talk radio show where I might have a sidekick. She might chime in because I need the black perspective, you guys, on this album. Even though I'm a white boy, I used to listen to this band a lot, you guys. And I wasn't trying to be cool or any of that. I liked it. Come on. I'm not going to say I'm weird like that. That's okay. That's Clark the Shark, 1982, circa 17 years old, South High School, Torrance. Now I'm going to go back in time and tell a story. 1991, there was this garage door place in Lomita, California. And I was right in the middle of this was early 91 or maybe late 1990. And I was in the middle of recording a project with the Greenhouse Effect that I think secretly revolutionized everything in music. I do. I think the song Ben is Dead and Star, those two songs, were revolutions. They were, and I would mail them to indie labels, of course, major labels. As I had already done for years with GE. Now, let's kind of frame the situation. I love to say that. September 1990, we played the big show at Wilson Park in Torrance that many of you in the South Bay remember. We had a drummer named Mike Valencia, and a lot of people were coming up to me saying, "Hey, Clark the Shark, you're the drummer, bro. It's so cool the way GE plays three-piece all these years, and you're singing and drumming at the same time. That's so fucking cool," as Phil Keegan is blaring these leads, often seemingly out of tune or out of key or sloppy to me, my standards, Clark the Shark, but I still loved it and liked it because to me, Phil Keegan was like Greg Ginn from Black Flag meets the sloppiness of Jimmy Page from Zepp. And yet the intricate, like Beethoven, Mozart shit from Ritchie Blackmore. And then he could play a bluesy thing, Robin Trower, Clapton type of shit too. It was very interesting jamming with Phil Keegan for many, many years, from 1986 until that fateful gig, you guys, that occurred at Wilson Park, September 1st, I believe, 1990, would be our last show ever with Phil Keegan. As a four-piece, our one and only gig. We may have had one or two others, you guys, I'm not sure. But I did not like the four-piece setup with GE. I didn't. Carmody on bass, the red-haired guy. And this new drummer, who was pretty good. Mike was a good drummer. He wasn't really hitting hard or tight, but he was getting by. He kind of reminded me of Pele Carlson, the guy that would come later with that other three-piece GE version that would soon happen. But I'm talking about September 1, 1990, Wilson Park. And that day, of course, it was a huge gig. And a lot of, the buzz around the South Bay is GE, the Greenhouse Effect. They're getting bigger. They're getting better, blah, blah, blah. And there was a big crowd, and it was a spectacular gig. It was amazing. I recorded some of it, and many of you have probably heard some of it. When I went back and listened to it, it kind of reminds me of The Who at like Isle of Wight. It's kind of ragged, and it's not really clean. It's not tight. And yet there's something about it I like, because it's just pure energy or something. Like Phil was on fire at that gig. And so was I, Clark the Shark and Ted and Mike. And our band, if I could go back and turn back the clock, I might have kept that version of GE together and just kept going with it. It wasn't meant to be, by the good Lord above, you guys. Flipper went on after that gig to move to San Jose. I think he got married and had a couple of kids, which would not have happened had he stayed in the Greenhouse Effect. I don't know what became of Ted. And me, Clark the Shark, I've never really left the band. Online, you see, I just keep going and going and, just pouring my money into this nonsense. And that's just still kind of going nowhere, even though a lot of people email me and, from Ireland and Germany and Singapore and Ukraine and shit. And they're like, we love Greenhouse Effect. We love you, Clark the Shark. Over in Russia with Putin. I'm like, you guys, I don't really care about Putin, or Zelensky. Like, somehow GE gets pulled into all this shit. Wars and, you name it. But I'm just a musician here, you guys. And that gig that day, it was just a big crowd, and GE, it was probably the biggest crowd we ever played to. There must have been 1,000 or 1,500 people, and there was a big mosh pit, and a guy was all bloody, and and I'm like, well, dude. And then some people in the South Bay were like, Sharky, you didn't have good security at your gig. And then there's all this criticism. Of course, there was a few bands from North Redondo that showed up and, were yelling at Clark the Shark in our band, even though, we were really good. And I'll never forget, these guys were being very disparaging. I'm not going to say the name of the band or the crew from the South Bay, Redondo, but they acted like they hated Clark the Shark, me, yours truly. And I can kind of understand 5'6", high squeaky voice guy. He thinks he's cool in a band. Like, what is this guy Clark the Shark doing in a band? And then what is he doing in the biggest band in the South Bay, in Torrance? And I'll never forget it, you guys. After the gig, these guys were still yelling, calling me names. They tried to yell at Flipper. He didn't even give a shit. He just packed up and left, And one of them came up to me, some blonde-haired guy, and he looked at me, and he gave me a high five. And it went unspoken. We said nothing. He just looked at me. One of these rowdy, boorish assholes from another band who was insulting me. Not just him, but like 50 of these guys. They just hated my band, but the crowd was so big, I don't think the crowd ever heard it. Or maybe they did. I don't know. But I'll never forget, just this one guy looked at me like Clark the Shark, and he shook my hand. And we looked at each other eye to eye. I don't think I've ever seen this guy again. And that's what I remember about that gig, dude. And he was one of the guys, one of the main guys in that crew. I never forgot this moment because Clark the Shark doesn't get respect or grudging, whatever you call it, like that, dude. I don't, but in that moment I did. And our band was quite good that day. I was hurt by that. All these guys just saying shit. They don't even know me. I don't know these guys. They don't know me right here on the Clark the Shit Show, but I kind of understand it's par for the course. Bands, especially punk bands in the South Bay, they don't want to see another band upstage them or any of that. I don't think we did. I went back and listened to that band, and they were really fucking good. We weren't as good as them. Maybe they didn't have the songwriting of GE, but in terms of tightness, I thought them and other bands might have been tighter or better than GE. It could be because we had Mike Valencia on drums and not Clark the Shark. Quite frankly, that could be why. I don't know, you guys, but we were still pretty darn good. At least, you know, a crowd of people, 1,000 people drunk, getting high, smoking weed everywhere. They're not going to notice. You know, it's not being recorded. They're just sitting in a crowd cheering. And that's what really happened that day, you guys. I had a little boombox and I recorded it, listened to it, and, you know, I was very persnickety. But the crowd was going nuts after every song. It was a roar. It was a roaring throng crowd, too. It was very loud. First time I ever played a gig really like that. There were other gigs with big crowds, but that one was the gig where a lot of people came up to me in the later, subsequent, ensuing months, and they said, Clark the Shark, you guys ruled the day. And, you know, I was like, I don't know. We could have been better, but I know it was fun. It was awesome. But after that gig, me, Ted, and Flipper and Mike went separate ways. And me and Flipper had something on the phone where I don't know what happened, but I didn't like the direction of the band. I didn't like GE as a 4-piece. I wanted to play drums. Again, like we were, you know me, Clark the Shark. I love Keith Moon and Neil Peart. I want to drum like them. But I also want to sing, you know, like Robert Plant and all that shit, or David Bowie. I want to be the singer. And Flipper's like, Sharky, you got to let that go. It's a bigger picture now. We're the 4-piece GE. And you, Shark, you're like Mike Patton of Faith No More, or Axl Rose, you know, kind of like the idiot in the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You're a frontman, Sharky, who leaps around, you know, like a psycho monkey on stage. And I didn't like that, you guys. I wanted the 3-piece band. You know me, I'm into the Minutemen, a noise agency, Cream, you know, dude, Grand Funk, or, you know, dude, I'm a purist. Triumph, baby, Rush. I like 3-piece bands. That's all I was ever in. I was in, you know, other bands on drums with 4 or 5 guys in them, but it wasn't the magical Sharky in that 3-piece where I'm drumming and the whole crowd is looking at me and I'm singing, not missing a note, not missing a beat. Hard to do that, you guys. And a lot of people would say that around the South Bay. Like, how does Shark play all these gigs so tight on drums, singing? And then playing with a guy like Phil Keegan, who's not really tight. He's ragged and very loose on stage, but he's very good. He's powerful. And it's almost like there is no other guitarist I was meant to play with but him. At least when I'm on drums. Now, of course, before I was with Phil, I was jamming with Steve Stepanian down, you know, Nob Hill, Redondo Beach down there. I met that guy. And we had some incredible 3-piece jams with Ted on bass. Later on, you know, with the guy Dave Basin was on bass in that project. But that, you know, he moved to Grass Valley. And somehow I hooked up with my old buddy from Parkway Elementary School and Newton Middle School, Torrance, Phil Keegan, and the rest was history, baby. Precarious #1, think about it. A Current Affair, Waiting for Your Love to Fail. The Greenhouse Effect, baby, was born and lived for many years, 4 or 5 years or so, with me and Flipper and Ted, just a 3-piece. Until that fateful gig at Wilson Park, Torrance, September 1, 1990. Now, after that gig, you know, it was sad, dude. I was very agonized and torn, and I called Flipper, and Flipper called me, and he was like, maybe we should jam, and I was like, maybe we should jam, but dude, there was a lot of hurt and hate. I'll go into this more in another video, but it never came back. And I called Ted on the phone one day and I said, Ted, let's keep the band going, just you and me. Me and the red hair, you know, Red Top, Ted Ropp, Rick Carmody, the red-haired tall bass player. And we went all by ourselves into the studio. Don't ask me how or why. This was like serendipity. We weren't doing this. It was God doing this, not us. And Clark the Shark, who secretly at 251 Paseo de Gracia, you guys, I was always a guitar player all by my lonesome in the garage. Not to me, I wasn't that great drummer they all saw in the South Bay. I would crank up my little, Fender Strat and an amp, and I would write songs for years and years and years. I'm talking, or on an acoustic guitar, going all the way back to 1981 when I was 16, or even before. Listening to punk rock, downstairs, 251 Paseo de Gracia, in the dungeon. That room that, of course, later became where Fu and Hagen lived when they came here in 1990 when my sister Kathy died. But, you guys, I got into the drumming thing, too, down there. I was drumming. My dad would come down there, shut up, you're a great drummer, but knock it off. You're shaking the house. And then I'd play my guitar. My dad would be like, yeah, you're all right. You're mediocre on guitar, but turn it down. You know how that is, you guys. Where when your dad is like, supportive, but with a backhanded compliment kind of thing. And at the time, I didn't know what it was doing, but it was making me have to prove something, or like, I'm going to show you, Pops, what I can do. And then, anyway, long story short, Greenhouse Effect with Flipper went separate ways. Late 1990, the final 4 months, September, October, November, December, were critical months because I said, Ted, listen to these songs I got on guitar. And of course, Ted already knew Clark the Shark's musical prowess, and he knew it well. He knew him and me had jammed, maybe not importantly or, secretly or whatever, up there in the garage at 251. But I'm like, dude, I'm going to put these songs together and you and me are going to go record them. And he's like, Sharky, we don't even have a drummer, blah, blah, blah. And I'm all, dude, I got a plan. Just like Phil Collins in Genesis, I'm going to play and overdub the drums and the guitars and the lead vocals. And you're going to play the bass. And we're going to be a two-piece. And Ted's like, that's not going to work, Sharky. We need a drummer. So anyway, we did it all, you guys. We rehearsed with a drum machine. We even went to the studio to rehearse with a drum machine. I'm not kidding, you guys. Just me and Ted. And we saw Flipper there one night, and I'll never forget it. It was so awkward. Flipper was jamming with some other band, or I don't know what he's trying to do. He might have been trying to keep the Greenhouse Effect going. And there were 2 Greenhouse Effects, you guys. But, of course, I was never worried. Me, Clark the Shark, I knew who the real one was right here on the Clark the Shit Show. But anyway, so for 4 months, me and Ted fucked around with a drum machine. We made demos, acoustic, electric guitars. And then I'm all, Ted, we're going in the studio. So in December of 1990, we went to El Segundo, Jet City Sound, where Bill Curdell and Mark Nathanson were, and we recorded 2 songs. And of course, those 2 are America the Beautiful and Wilson Phillips. And I'll remember, we just made a tape, like a 2-song demo. And it was really good, my drumming and my guitar overdubbed, and Ted and my singing, of course. And it was like the best thing I had ever recorded or something. And I had experience because before GE, I had been going to studios recording all by my lonesome. And then, you put all that with the years and years of playing with Flipper, Phil Keegan. And me and Ted created magic in there in December 1990. And I was like, dude, let's go do more songs next month. So January 1991, we go into a different studio because Jet City Sound with Bill Curdell was rather expensive. It cost us like $50 or $40 or, something. $100. I don't remember, but we never paid it. We couldn't, and they just gave it to us for free or for a discount or something. But we got our shit done. the two songs. But then we went into this place called Excessive Light and Sound in Harbor City, California, with a guy named Andy Houston. And we recorded 6 more songs. And of course, the 22nd Street, you guys all know, incredible. Sounds like U2, The Cure, the Bauhaus. Nothing like GE with Phil Keegan. Incredible song. And of course, Ben is Dead, which is a rework of Ted Nugent's and the Amboy Dukes' Journey to the Center of Shark's Mind. Hey Negrita, which is really just Neil Young reworked. What a song that is. And then Star, which is bizarrely original. And I believe it is the first official grunge anthem song of the 1990s. And when we had assembled our 8-song album Going Legit, this fucking album was so good. I was like, I went and copyrighted it with, Washington, PTO or whatever, US PTO or all that shit, trademark. I had to, you guys. I don't get this shit stolen, even though every song on our album was stolen. People have said Sharky, America the Beautiful is a rework of The Who, Heaven and Hell, and then it's mixed with Genesis from A Trick of the Tail, Dance on a Volcano. You sandwich those 2 songs together, and I'm like, yeah, totally, we're paying homage. And they're like, no, Sharky. People around the South Bay were like, you're ripping off. And then, of course, Ben is Dead. The lead is very original. That little thing I'm playing on guitar, the intro. And it doesn't sound like anything. But there was a guy in the South Bay said, that sounds very reminiscent of Ted Nugent. And then it busts into parts that are like Journey to the Center of Your Mind. There's no doubt about it. The one verse then breaks into it. It never really has a chorus. It has like a pre-chorus, then a verse. Hey Negrita, of course, is just Neil Young, Like a Hurricane, or one of those songs from Crazy Horse, slowed down, tweaked. It's original. It doesn't really sound like them, but then again, yes, it does. Right here on the Clark the Shit Show. And Wilson Phillips sounds like Rick Derringer, Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, I think. It might be him or maybe not. I'm not sure. It could be that other band with Bobby Caldwell. But I don't think it does, you guys. But people in the South Bay say that. But 22nd Street is bloody original. Somebody once said it sounds a little like The Alarm or that band, the Red Rockers, that opened for U2 in 1985. And they said, that little guitar thing, dude, you ripped off, Sharky. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe not, And then God's Joke, of course, is a song that's traditional arrangement, blues, paying homage. But in general, the whole album, you guys, it's an incredible album. And there's a song called Dead End Street, of course, that's reminiscent of the 80s or, maybe Rush, 1980s sound or 70s sound, or maybe even 60s, all mishmashed together right here on the Clark the Shit Show. But 8-song demo, basically. It sounded so good, I turned it into an album, and I printed up CDs, cover. I couldn't afford color. The cover was black and white. I don't have one of these today, you guys, but they're out there. Greenhouse Effect, Going Legit. February, official release, 1991. And I would mail this everywhere, you guys. I had a little factory at 251 with like hundreds of yellow envelopes, biographies, pictures of the band. I would still use the pictures with me, Flipper, Phil Keegan, and Ted. You never know. Maybe we'll get a record deal. I'll go get him back and it'll all change or blah, blah. But anyway, this album really for the first time got a lot of responses that I have with me to this day in that room over there down here in San Diego, where a lot of letters were like people that, A&Rs and indie labels and major labels were like, wow, You guys have come a long way. But really, it's not true, you guys. We were always this good on every demo and every live show right here on the Clark the Shit Show. So anyway, I think Going Legit and maybe the songs Star, Hey Negrita, and Ben is Dead, 22nd Street, I think those are the real birth of grunge. You could make a strong case for Wilson Phillips, and I think a lot of record labels heard that. And having already heard plenty of tapes with Phil Flipper Keegan, many labels had made up their minds that Greenhouse Effect and this three-piece format, they are the band, you guys. This is the sound. Redondo Beach, Torrance, Los Angeles. Now, unbeknownst to me, Clark the Shark, or maybe perhaps well known to me, in Flipside magazine, the pages, there was a band up in Seattle called the Douchebag Effect. And they had this guy named Blake Douchebag. And there was a whole scene going on, you guys, up in Seattle of bands that were nowhere near as good as GE. Come on, you guys, I'm into Rush. I'm into the Beatles, dude. I'm into David Bowie, blah, blah, blah here. You know, Ted Nugent and Captain Beyond. You guys have seen my reviews. Clark the Shark's like a fucking encyclopedia of music. I'm into Frank fucking Zappa here and shit. Adrian Belew, Robert Fripp, Brian Eno, blah, blah, yada, yada, Iggy Pop, Velvet Underground. And SLY and the Family Stone, baby. So don't tell me that a bunch of hacks from Seattle got anything on Clark the Shark from Redondo Beach. And I believe to this day that the whole scene in Redondo Beach, 1987 to 1991, was the real scene, not Seattle and Blake Douchebag. Long story short, though, Geffen Records and a guy named Gary Gersh and a guy named Craig Aronson contacted me, yours truly, Clark the Shark, about March of 1991. And I'll never forget, this Craig Aronson guy was really into the sound and everything about GE, the culture. He wanted to learn about my family, 251 Passata Gracia. And I'm like, oh, dude, you're locked in, bro. You want to hear the story of Clark the Shark, the Shark-a-Lamma Ding Dong, the Shark-a-Doodle-Doo, 1-800-449-8255 on the Clark the Shit Show right here. And him and Gary Gersh were very enthralled in it all. But they never really, we talked on the phone maybe 3-4 times. They had the demos, and they had the earlier albums with Phil Keegan. And they said, Sharky, this new album you guys got, you and Phil aren't on. It's just you and Ted. And they said, this is interesting and good. You guys are much more melodic, but we lack that old energy you guys were doing before, too. And I was like, you guys are right, dude. I can go call Flipper and bring him back anytime. I think. I'm not sure if I really could, you guys. But if I had a record deal on Geffen Records, MCA, Universal was calling here, you guys. And I think I could have got Flipper to come back. We'll do all these new songs, blah, blah, blah. But over time, Aronson and Gersh stopped calling. And I didn't really care because I was used to talking to record labels. I talked to people from Sony, Mercury, Capitol EMI, and then all the indie labels, Twin Tone, Sub Pop, SST, just all the little labels, punk, indie, underground, alternative, grunge, everywhere. We weren't from Seattle. It was a big problem. I did not know this yet. And in early 1991, I did not know how big the Seattle scene really was up there, you guys. Now, mainly, to be perfectly honest and frank, Seattle was like heavy metal turned into something else. It was like Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden. That was really the scene. course, Blake Douchebag and Mudhoney and Tad and those bands were probably never going to go anywhere. You know, they were just like kind of like me, Clark the Shark, you know, guys in a studio with a demo and just, you know, bullshit. The bands that were going to make it big were going to be kind of the quasi neo heavy metal bands like Alice in Chains and that shit. And I wasn't threatened by that shit. I thought that, you know, was garbage. Kind of lame. And the same way I kind of thought Faith No More and the Red Hot Chili Peppers were lame. Now, at the time, you guys, in early 91, I didn't know that I had to say I liked RHCP and Faith No More because they were the only thing getting on MTV at the time, or, you know, on the big time. And I had to be like, yeah, dude, I want to be like that, you know, 4-piece. I want to be this psycho like Mike Patton. I really didn't like the band, though, you guys. I didn't. I was into Bowie, Zappa, and all that shit. Right here on the Clark the Shit Show, the Beatles, Rubber Soul. I was a purist, you know, Brian Wilson, and all that shit, you guys. And I was convinced that me, myself, and I, and the Greenhouse Effect, just two guys, me and Ted, were going to change the world. And I think Ted thought and felt it too. Because we were just regular guys wearing T-shirts out of Torrance. We looked like we could work at a 7-Eleven or a gas station or a Mighty Mart. Just torn jeans and T-shirt losers. Plus, we had no money. We couldn't afford shit anyway, dude. I barely had a car. I had like a VW piece of shit. You know, we barely made it to the studio or gigs, if you know what I mean, right here on the Clark the Shit Show. But anyway, long story short, we found this drummer about March 1991, April 1991, something like that. And it was a guy from San Pedro, California. You all may have heard of him, Marty Silva. And what a drummer this guy was, like Neil Peart, fucking Keith Moon, John Bonham. Dude, hard hitting. And I thought he was too good to play with me and Ted. But when we locked in at the studio over there in Harbor City at ALS, Andy Houston even had to come in the room and say, you guys are fucking incredible, 3-piece. And it was, you guys. Marty heard this, he heard this demo just once or twice. He learned every song, and he came, and we played. And it was incredible, you guys. And the rest was history. Dude, we started playing shows again all around with all those same punk bands again. And now GE was a force to be reckoned with. We weren't playing all the cheesy leads like Flipper. That GE, kind of quasi-heavy metal, psychedelic garage band was gone, replaced with a new 3-piece garage band, but that's tight, sophisticated, and melodic. And I was saying, calling Aronson and Gersh and other labels saying, you guys should probably come to a gig and see GE live now. It's all changed. We're incredible. And, playing big gigs, you guys. I don't know if A&R guys ever showed. They probably did. I don't know. But playing around town with all kinds of bands in the summer of 1991. Great shows. Of course, I would meet up with Bob Becker, who was working with that band, I think FYP and the Whitecaps. And he would start Fearless Records, and he was asking me, Clark the Shark, I want you there with me. And I was like, kind of like, who's the guy where KG, he's like, I'm Solo Man 5000, and I aims to keep it that way. I'm Clark the Shark. I was like that, you guys. Just a young, stupid kid. I didn't know. I probably should have hooked up with Bob Becker in 1991 at that Fearless Records. Who knows? But I never did. And I always kept believing that GE would get a record deal. And it was an incredible summer down there, you guys, in Redondo Beach, Torrance, Hermosa Beach, Los Angeles, the South Bay, 1991. Unbeknownst, or maybe knownst, to all of us, up in Seattle, it was just exploding, you guys. I wouldn't say that scene was bigger than our scene, though. I wouldn't. No way. Not with bands like GE in the scene in Los Angeles. No way, baby. But one day, dude, late in 1991, I turned on MTV and I saw this three-piece band. Had a guy named Blake Douchebag. You know, he probably grew up on the same or similar music as Clark the Shark up there, listening to Bowie, listening to Black Sabbath and all that shit, Pixies. And, you know, my heart was a bit broken when I found out they were on Geffen and with Gary Gersh and Craig Aronson. And I called Craig Aronson. I found his number. And I was like, dude, you know, you signed them. Okay, cool. When you going to sign GE too, also? You and Gersh. Right here on the Clark the Shit Show. And, you know, he was like, keep recording, keep playing, Sharky. Maybe not with me, or maybe with me, or maybe with somebody, but you guys are gonna blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know, it was anticlimactical or something, you know. Now it's getting late in 1991, and all over MTV, Blake Douchebag and his band are just exploding, you know. They're getting like huge, multi-platinum shit. And dude, I'm just like, now it's getting to be Christmas 1991, and Blake's album is under every Christmas tree. And dude, it's like, what the fuck is happening? And not just Blake, all these other bands are riding the coattails or something. Or, dude, maybe they were around before. I didn't do my research and didn't even know, because people kept telling me, Sharky, you know, Soundgarden, you know about them. They were already around, and so was Alice in Chains and a bunch of these bands, and even the fucking dude from Pearl Jam. They're way before Blake. And I'm like, I don't fucking care who was before who or blah, blah. They all suck. That sound is fucking, you know, one-dimensional. It's just a bunch of guys moaning and hanging on a mic, and it's step A, baby. GE's already on step D, you know, D, E, F, G or something. GE, right here on the Clark the Shit Show. But anyway, in my other life in 1991, I worked at a garage door place by day, you guys, before 6 p.m. when the gigs and shit would start. A place called G&G Garage Door Lomita. And I would listen to SLY and the Family Stone in my car. I had a cassette, and I would listen to it going to work, coming home from work, during work. Dude, you name it. And I like this shit. And it would get me away from thinking about Blake or thinking about garage doors or, you know, you guys, it would. It was, well, dude, it was relaxing to hear, you know, I want to take you higher, baby. Or like, oh, dude, what a song. And I was so inspired by it. Everybody is a shark. Everybody is a star. It inspired me to keep going with GE, the Greenhouse Effect, you guys. It did. You know, there's some songs here, Stand and Life, and, you know, Fun. That though they are the greatest hits, you know, they're good songs. They're solid, but maybe, you know, they ain't as good as Dance to the Music, baby. What a fucking amazing song from SLY and the Family Stone. And, dude, my favorite song, Everyday People. Of course, I get sick of it like we all do. But Shark is everyday people. I don't know, you guys. I take it back. Track 3, Hot Fun in the Summertime. It's just glorious, you guys. It doesn't really sound like the other songs. It's melodic. It's like in 6/8 or 3/4 time. Do 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 do. Hi, 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 shark. Doo summertime. I love it, you guys. And then Milady, I don't know. It's good. It's not written up in blue. Perhaps it shouldn't be. Sing a simple song. My songs aren't simple, you guys. They're a bit complicated, but melodic. Right here on the Clark the Shit Show. Those songs ongoing legit. And then, of course, the way ahead of its time funk of Thank You for Letting Me Be Shark's Self. Incredible, dude. Sounds like a song from 1976 or 1978. It's not, you guys. It's from way back in 69, 70. Way ahead of their time. SLY and the Family Stone, you guys, with all the punk rock and indie alternative grunge and metal and shit, garage rock that I listen to. You guys forget all that. There's nothing I like more than just a little SLY and the Family Stone. And I'll never forget, you guys, I was listening to this one morning. I went into work at the garage door place, and I'm not sure what year. Was it 1991 or 1990? By day, I had a different life. I had to work the 9 to 5. And garage doors, before I did swimming pools with Walt at A to Z Pools in Torrance, much later in 1996, I began there. But long before that, I was a garage door installer. You guys, know those, the roll-up doors where you crank, you torque the spring. And I always worked with this Christian guy, really tall guy. I forget his name. His name also might have been Aaron. I'm not sure. But he was hardcore Christian. I'll never forget that. I usually worked with him. And then some days I worked with this other guy named Mitch. And there was this really cool guy named Robert. And the four of us were the garage door installer guys. And I did this job for what seemed like 8 months, or it seemed like forever, you guys. But one day I walked in there, and there was a check sitting on the desk, and there's supposed to be 2 checks or something, or a check and an invoice. And there was just one envelope. And the guy, Gary, there was Gus and Gary. And I said, hey, where's my other invoice or check? And he's like, looked at me right in my face. And he said, you're only getting 1 check. And I'm like, oh, you guys changed it with the computer? The little Clark the Shark, high squeaky voice, 5'6". And he's like, no, we don't need you anymore. And I'll never forget, you guys, that's what he said. He said, we don't need you anymore. He didn't say, Clark, you did a great job as a garage door guy. You were learning the trade. I was never really trusted to be the guy who handled the skill saw or the blade, saw. Like they trusted the tall Christian guy, but not me. I didn't know at the time, you guys. I was 25, 26, 1991. At night, they didn't know who they were talking to. A superstar in the Greenhouse Effect, Clark the Shark. But by day, you guys, I'm working the 9 to 5 just doing garage doors like everyone else, or cleaning pools, or being a plumber or something. But I went over to Gus, and I said, Gus, what's going on? And he's all, we're letting you go. It was just like that, you guys. Like, I was gone that day. Kind of like a restraining order where the judge is like, Sharky, you're out. You're not going back to that house tonight. And I remember I walked out to the parking lot, and I was like, Mitch, don't let them do this, bro. They just let me go. And Mitch had a worried look in his eye. He's all, you mean I got to work alone today? And that was it, you guys. And I think his name was Daryl or Aaron. I can't remember. And I'm like, Daryl, Aaron, dude, tall Christian guy. You got my back. And he was looking at me with a weird look. And Robert, too. You guys, I went back to my car, and I listened to SLY and the Family Stone, and I drove home. And I later started my own garage door company all by myself. And I called it Palos Verdes Garage Door. And it lasted for a few garage doors. It did, you guys, before I went back to Bel Air, working at Mr. Ida's with my brother Greg up in Beverly Hills. But who knows, you guys, I should have kept the Palos Verdes garage door thing going. If anything, just to fucking rub it in the face of Gus and Gary. 1991, you guys, G&G garage door. And that's a true story. But I went back at night doing my night job with GE, the Greenhouse Effect, which was totally different and alien to my day jobs as a pool guy, garage door, lawnmower, landscaper, whatever I could fucking do, you guys, to make a buck so I could record a song right here on the Clark the Shark Show. But let me tell you, there's more to talk about this story, you guys. There is. There's much more. I only have 4625 of data here. But Sly and the Family Stone, with all the punk rock and metal and shit, underground grunge and indie and Brian Eno and, Peter Gabriel and Bowie that I listened to, I would always come back to just hot fun in the summertime, baby. Right here on the Clark the Shit Show. 1-800-449-8255, or I think I just gave you the only review of this album you'll ever need because it came with a little story and a little disclosure that I remember you, Gus and Gary, at G&G Garage Door